Today, we're going to talk about gimbals. What do you guys think? Should we do it? Yeah, they seem pretty excited. All right, so we're going to talk in particular about the Moza AirCross 2, which is a new gimbal I just picked up pretty recently. And we'll touch on the Moza Air 2, which is also here because I've really enjoyed using that one as well. So let's get right into it. Okay, I want to talk about a new gimbal from Moza, the AirCross 2. Now, it's not so much a review as it's my take on gimbals in general, because over the years, both at work and for personal use as a filmmaker, I've used a really wide variety of consumer-grade gimbals for different purposes. I've used the Zhiyun Crane and all of its iterations. I've also used the ProSpec DJI Ronin, and personally, I've owned the following: the DJI Ronin M, the Moza Air, the Moza AirCross, the Moza Air 2, which is just over my shoulder here, and now the Moza AirCross 2. Now you might have noticed a slight trend there in what I've owned, and yeah, it's been a number of Moza products, because here's the thing. Motorized gimbals all do pretty much the same thing. They all take your camera, they smooth out the footage you're taking, and that's it. So if they all do the exact same thing, why own so many over the years? Functionality. It's honestly the only thing that will differentiate them. Now, you'll get some people online who do the equivalent of pixel peeping with footage and say, oh look, this one has micro jitters, or that one was a few percent slower when making a rapid turn. And I have to say, look, from experience, that 99% of the time it comes down to the user. So many people don't balance their gimbals properly, or they overload one of the axis motors by putting on a lens that's heavier than the camera and then not balance it properly based on that, or they don't know how to walk with a gimbal. And that's not the gimbal's fault though. So I'm saying that as long as everything is equal, that everything is balanced properly, you're going to see a pretty well identical experience in smoothing out footage amongst the long list of available gimbals on the market today. Also, apparently, you shouldn't turn this video into a drinking game where you take a shot every time I say gimbal. You'll need medical help by the end of the show. Okay, so why Moza? Why do I keep gravitating to this particular brand? Basically, innovative features, the handling, payload capacity for the size and weight, and constant improvements. There's a number of brands that will improve capabilities with a new model, but Moza has constantly improved capabilities even while the product is out with firmware updates. So starting with the things I love about the Moza Air 2 and the AirCross 2, the controls. For years, I had to pair up my smartphone and make all my adjustments and calibrations there. With the Moza Air 2 and the AirCross 2, I can do this on the gimbal itself, even the auto-tuning. Now let's look at one of the things I talked about a second ago, the issue of balancing. The Moza setup allows for you to do a balance check right from the gimbal itself, and with the AirCross 2, they've also given you these markings on the adjustment points themselves. And this can help make sure that you're right in line with where you need to be for very smooth movements. The AirCross 2 also benefits from some of the design improvements of the gimbal itself. They've added rubber pieces over some of the spots here where you're likely to have metal on metal contact, or even have your lens possibly hit it while you're setting up or transporting the gimbal. And this would normally scratch the paint on the metal, so this really helps. The menu has also improved with a separate power button on the side and an RGB light right here around the multi-purpose knob. Now it looks cool cycling through the RGB colors, but it also changes colors based on what you're doing, like inception mode. And you can also adjust the brightness of the light or turn it off altogether if you wanted to. I found it actually comes in handy when you're filming it with multiple cameras in a dark area like a concert or something, and you want to go back to the gimbal after you've set it down, making it easier to find and such. The AirCross 2 has also moved to an individual proprietary battery, making swapping them out so much quicker. They've put a tab on the side of the gimbal housing though, so you can plug it in and charge it while you're shooting from a power bank that you may keep in your pocket. Now Moza claims up to 12 hours of battery life per charge, but once you put on heavier cameras and get closer to that 7-pound payload and then add the focus motor, power your camera from the gimbal, use a monitor, etc., that could put a serious strain on battery life. So having the ability to keep going while shooting with something you can keep in your pocket is really handy. If you've got some spare batteries in your case and want to know the charge currently, just give them a shake, which I think is pretty cool. Now, just a quick note on my own particular setup here using Sony cameras. I love that Moza gimbals will not only control but also power the camera while I'm using them. Now that's great. That said, if you're using your Sony camera in PC remote mode with the gimbal, you won't have the camera's in-body image stabilization working. This is not the fault of the gimbal, this is a limitation of the firmware of the camera itself. That might change in the future, but if you're someone who wants not only your gimbal smoothing things, but your camera's built-in stabilization also smoothing things, just understand that stops when you're in PC remote mode. If you want to have both, easy. Disconnect the cable and then hit the record button on it manually on the camera itself. It's really not a deal breaker since the AirCross 2 does such an amazing job and smoothing things out as it is, shouldn't be an issue. You can even adjust that level of filtering out the movements of your hands from within the app and on the OLED screen itself. The next thing I want to talk about is the focus motor. Now it's really light, really compact, and gets its power right from the gimbal itself. Now for anyone with cine lenses, they'll love this to do any of the quick focus adjustments. And you can program within the menus on the gimbal the start and stop points, making smooth rack focus movements that will adjust when activated automatically. Now the really cool thing though is that you can get two of these motors and put one on the zoom ring, the other one on the focus ring, and then with some setup in your timing, do a perfect dolly zoom effect. Now something that was made popular with movies like Vertigo and Jaws, for example. Now I'd love to show you how well this works, but I found that the band that connects to the non-cine lenses to not work as well with the lenses I've got. Now this isn't the fault of the motor. The lenses like the Samyang 14mm 2.8 already has a pretty bumpy edge that I use, and that means I can't really get a smooth connection on it. But meanwhile, I do have the Zeiss Batiste lenses where it's a perfectly smooth spot, and this makes a really good connection. But then again, this may not always be necessary, because if you are controlling a Sony camera like I am here, a couple of taps to the controls on the side will make the knob go from whatever you set it up into an electronic focus mode. This means that you can actually control the focus of your lens electronically from the gimbal itself, never needing to actually touch the camera while filming. That for me is a game changer and makes things even quicker for setup. Speaking of quick setups, the AirCross 2 now has lockable access points on every axis. This lets me calibrate the camera I'm using at home on a level surface and then transport the gimbal someplace without it banging all around. Thanks to their locking plate that you attach to the L bracket, the precise placement of the camera is already set to wherever you go and reattach the camera. And since these are just Arca Swiss style plates being used, you can actually take this off and put it onto your tripod if you wanted. Now, with your smartphone handy, a feature for the AirCross 2 and added to the Air 2 with firmware update is Mimic Control. That's where, with your smartphone, you can actually move the gimbal around remotely. Now, this could be very handy if you're mounting the gimbal on a tripod and it's stationary and you're wanting to control it remotely. There's also an object tracking setup, which is very easy to set up. They've included a simple hot shoe mount for your smartphone, and it's actually really nice quality. It's been built really, really well. And then once you've got it on your hot shoe, consider the field of view that's in your camera screen, because that's what you'll want to keep kind of dead center. But once you've dragged your finger over and across the thing that you want to keep track of, the gimbal will actually keep focused on it, which is really handy for those doing sports or tracking someone while you're driving or walking beside it. Now, another great feature with the smartphone app is how easy it is to both set up time lapses, hyperlapses, but one feature I've not really seen talked about much is the repeated motion track, where if you want to take a shot, repeat that shot multiple times for either special effects, this is how you do it. Simply program in where you want it to start, where you want it to go, as well as other points, and how long you want it to take to get there. But now you can simply film over and over again, which is great for when you have to retake a shot in a scene because something messed up on the set. Inception mode is a quick double click to activate, and you can set it to however you want it to be, both the speed and the amount of rotations. FPV mode is like it sounds, giving you a first-person view with the gimbal, and Sport mode gives you rapid movements to track fast-moving objects. Now, you do sacrifice some of the smoothness when you do this, but that makes sense because you're aiming for fast-moving motors that may have to abruptly change direction depending on where you're panning to. Now, I know that not everyone watching this video will be English speaking, so changing the language on the gimbal is actually quite easy. If you triple-click the button here, it'll switch to Chinese, and on the AirCross 2, you'll find it in the menu system. So that's it, basically. The Moza Air 2 has a weight capacity of a little up to and over 9 pounds. The AirCross 2 does up to a little over 7 pounds. I'm shooting with mirrorless Sony cameras with relatively lightweight lenses. Honestly, if I'm heading out, I'm probably going to lean to taking the AirCross 2 just for the practicality. But honestly, both of these gimbals are so easy to use, I'd take them over the Ronin M. Their mounting points for accessories not being proprietary makes me want to take them out more than the Ronin S. And the menu system capabilities make me want to use them more than the Zhiyun crane models. So yeah, after 4 Moza products and great customer service, I'm going to continue using these. So thanks for watching. Now I wonder if I can put on the Sony QX1. Now this is going to be so weird. This was never designed with this in mind, but I've just got to know. I guess the answer is yes.